All right. Good to go, Bill.
Okay, so thanks everybody for joining. Our agenda tonight is Matt's going to, as we do in each of our monthly meetings, Matt's going to give us an update of kind of what's been happening the last month, what's coming up in the next month, just kind of that overview. And then Brenna, who's board member running our events, is going to talk about the upcoming events we have, and then spend a little additional time talking about a brand new activity we have around primary day canvassing and support for that, and really looking to get as many folks involved in that as possible. We've got two educational topics that we have scheduled tonight. The first is on primaries and what's wrong with the primaries we have now, what are the different alternatives, and as you're asked about it, what are the ones that we support and why. And Pete has agreed to give us a good talk on that, and he did a great job talking about ranked choice voting last time, so he kind of got drafted this time to help us with that. Then the second topic is answering tough questions, and in talking to a number of the volunteers, there's been one question that's come up repeatedly, so that's the first one we're going to address tonight, and I'll go in and just put the question on the table. And then Tonya Sweat, has another board member, has agreed to talk about that answer, and we want to, again, on all the educational topics, this is something we want to have discussion, questions, and interaction about, so that you're comfortable talking about it, and as things come up, you feel very comfortable about that. Then we'll just open up for additional topics from the floor, things we want to talk about tonight or put on the agenda for future questions from the floor, as it goes to a topic, what anything we want to talk about. I'll mention briefly what our plan, when the next meeting will be. And then, as we've done in our two previous meetings, we'll turn off the recording. Anybody can say whatever they want to. We'll just have an open discussion, and that will run until the last person hangs up. So with that, Matt, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Bill. So I'm going to step away from the usual format of going through the, what we've done and what we're going to do. Brenna's going to cover what we're going to do. I just wanted to touch on some things that are near and dear to my heart. So one, we've got two exciting new candidates coming up, and I can't say who they are yet, but I think you all are going to be very excited about that. And why am I bringing that up? I'm bringing that up because I want you to realize that there's a lot going on around behind the scenes that the board is doing that they can't talk about all the time, because some of it has to remain private until it can be public. And so it may seem like we're not doing a lot, but we're doing a lot. Believe me, we're meeting every week. Our meetings are going for much longer than the hour that they're supposed to go for every week. We're talking on Discord every day. We want you to be talking on Discord. And so that's kind of where I'm going tonight. Just be aware that there's a lot going on. One of the things we heard from a candidate, I'll get into that part in a minute. So you've got a strong leadership team. That's the message I'm trying to get to you. We're looking for county captains. So if you're interested in helping out and getting involved, this is your way to step in. It's a way to make connections and build the party, and we need county captains. Another way, legislative affairs team. We supported 5 bills this past session. We're looking to actually propose legislation next year, to write some. The legislative affairs team is always looking for new people. Are you interested in helping participate in it? Love to have you. Get in contact with us. Send us an email at maryland@forwardparty.com. We need to outreach potential donors and volunteers. There's a lot of people out there. There's thousands of them that have contributed their email and their phone number to our list, but just aren't participating on a regular basis, and we want to get out to them. How would you like to make some calls? Maybe make some new friends along the way. We have a list, and as the board members can attest to you, as we've been to events, almost everybody wants to hear from us once we start talking. They're all interested in what we have to say. 90% of the people we talk to are like, yeah, I'll sign your petition. Absolutely. Without an argument. So it's really easy to make these calls. It's an opportunity to make some new friends. Maybe you're the type of person that wants to go out and do some public speaking. Well, we've been going around and doing a road show at various cities and counties talking about RCV and single primaries. We'd love to have you join the road show. We were just out at New Carrollton, and we went to a public meeting, so this is public information. And so the only comment that the mayor and the council members had was not, should we implement RCV, but how fast can we get it done? And do we actually need to talk to people about it, or can we just pass a law and have it done? So it wasn't a matter of should we or should we not do it. This is the kind of thing that we're finding there's great enthusiasm for. So there's another opportunity to go out and do the road show. And to do that, you need to become comfortable with talking about forward. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So let's go on to the next slide, Bill. All right. So what am I asking of you? I'm asking you to spread the word. I'm asking you to tell a friend or a relative about Maryland Forward. People are looking for a new message. People are tired of hearing the same message. What was I referring to earlier about candidates and I almost went off in the wrong direction? One of our potential candidates said to us, people are begging for Forward. They don't know that they are, but they're begging for it. When he goes and he talks to them, they're like, oh, that is such a cool idea. I want to do some of that. And he's not even running as a Forward candidate yet. So people are begging for it. They just don't know they are. So what we need to do is spread the word. Okay. We need to give them another option than the standard options. And that's what we're asking you to do. So tell your friends, tell your relatives, tell your dog. No, your dog can't vote. Like, follow, post on social media. We have Twitter/X, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Threads if you're really interested. We have TikTok, we have YouTube. Find one of them that's your favorite. Go out, like, follow, and post on social media about Maryland Forward. That is really, really helpful. You guys have no idea how big of a deal that is. You say it, your friends will pick it up. If you don't know what you're doing on social media, talk to a 17-year-old or a 12-year-old. They'll be happy to help you. But people actually do pay attention to this stuff, and social media really does matter. Yeah, some of it's nasty and gross. We don't have to engage in that, but we can put out a positive message, and that's always what we should be putting out, is a positive message. But you can use it for good, just like you can use it for evil. Go out and get yourself some merch. That's a good way to spread the word. Wear your shirt proudly. Hey, Robert, thanks for joining us tonight. You can get the merch directly on our site, and we'll get a little bit of a boost from you purchasing it there. Really cool Maryland Forward logo stuff. Bill just got himself a polo shirt. He's going to be really happy when he gets that in the mail. And then, of course, I'm going to ask you, because that's my job as chair, right, to ask for money. But seriously, $1, $5, I don't care how much it is. It's the actual act of donating cash and putting a donation as an increasing item, on our list, so that we get more and more donors, that is actually going to help us get larger donations. Okay, so every time somebody donates, that counts toward a donor in our list. When we increase the number of donors, then those big donors are like, oh, look how many donors you have. Well, then maybe I'll donate to you. So if you haven't already done so, $1, $5, $10, whatever you can afford. And even better, do it recurring. I mean, what's $1 a month? Really? Is it that big a deal? No, but it shows your commitment to wanting to change politics in Maryland. And we need your help and your support and your commitment. And we're not asking a whole lot. So please do what you can. And as far as the upcoming events, I'm going to turn those over to Brenna.
Good afternoon. So we've got lots of activities coming up over the next several months. The first one we've got is Only Days. So if you're in the Only area, come check us out. We're going to have a booth. We'll be collecting signatures, spreading some messages about voting reform and trying to get others excited about what we're doing here in Forward. I hear there are going to be fireworks, so come say hi to Forward and stay for the fireworks and enjoy that. We've also got a candidate event this Saturday. Only Days is April 27th. And then we've got a candidate event this Saturday. Yeah, Bill, what's up?
Just wanted to mention I got a golf shirt. The reason I got it is I'm going to be at Only Days. I'm also going to be doing the primary canvassing that she's talking about. So if any of you are going to be at Only Days, come by, say hi. But two great events that I'm going to be participating in.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I can't wait to see the polos. So very cool. And so one of the candidates, Andrea Crooms, she's having an event this weekend. So we're trying to support her. And so if you're Matt, is she Maryland 5?
Yes, she's Maryland 5.
Yeah, so if you're in the 5th Congressional District, come out, say hi to Andrea Crooms, Saturday at 11.
Even if you're not in the 5th Congressional District, go out, say hi, promote Forward, and show your support for one of our great candidates.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to kind of skip over canvassing because we've got another slide dedicated to that, but that's coming up. And so then the last category of events that we got coming up here are the Pride events, which begin at the beginning part of June and will kind of carry us through July, and then we'll revisit a few in the fall. But so we're trying to just make sure that we're out in the community as much as we can. Pride events are a really great way to connect with folks who are, interested in talking about ways that we can change voting, how we can make a place that's more representative for the rest of us. And so we'll be at all of those events. And so if you've got some time and you want to come hang out with us and help us collect signatures, we'd love to have you. And one of the things, maybe you don't feel comfortable like sharing the Forward message, or you're not sure what to say, but just shoot one of us a note. Matt, Bill, Dave, me, Pete, we're all happy to talk you through what it's like to volunteer at an event and what it looks like to collect signatures. The more the merrier, and we really want to make sure that we're upskilling everyone who's working in this. So lots of things coming up this summer, and we're also starting to look at some kind of 4th of July activities. So if you've got a community event in your area that you think we should check out, please send me a note. I'll put my email in the chat. I'd love to take your suggestions. Matt, what's up?
I just realized we forgot to put on here entirely that we're having the Primary Days training events this week and through Sunday, I think. So there are various different events. One of them is a virtual event tomorrow night, and the whole point of those events is to give you a chance to practice your elevator pitch, to give you a chance to figure out how to talk to people. So come out to one of those. There'll be one here in Saturday in Frederick, and I'll be doing one virtually tomorrow night. Lots of opportunities to practice.
Yeah, it's actually a great segue. If you want to flip to the next slide, I've got those listed out there. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time specifically talking about the Primary Day canvassing. This is a really big upcoming event for us where we're looking to get all hands on deck. With Primary Day, our goal is to really engage with those voters who tend to be more engaged if they're coming out on Primary Day. The assumption is that they probably are a little bit more engaged in the overall electoral process. And so we want to go be out in the various communities where we can to share what's going on Forward, make ourselves known, hopefully collect a few signatures in the process. And so to do that, we're going to be identifying several locations throughout the state, probably tending towards some of the more central locations. We're doing some research right now to figure out which polling locations will make the most sense for us to really show up in force. And of course, we are going to abide by all of the Board of Elections laws about how close we can be. So we are very aware of that and planning that in our approach. And then, like Matt mentioned, we do have training set up over the next couple of weeks to make sure that anyone who wants to come out and participate has the opportunity to practice, has the opportunity to meet some of us if you haven't met us already, and really get comfortable with what it is that Forward's trying to do and how we're sharing our message. So we do have a virtual option tomorrow. Matt's hosting an in-person option in Frederick on Saturday. And then the following weekend, Tanya, who I think is on the line, Tanya is hosting a session in Bowie. So all of those trainings, if you're interested in any or all of those pages are live. So please go ahead and RSVP there. And then, the goal of those training sessions is really to make sure that our volunteers are ready for primary day. And so we've got a primary day event page that's now live. So if you're interested in joining us, for an hour, for a couple hours, maybe the whole day, if you're so inclined, you can go ahead and sign up. And as we solidify which locations we're going to be participating at, we'll make sure to reach out and let you know where we're going to be, and make sure that we can find a place that's a good distance and place for you to kind of attend. So please go ahead and RSVP. I'll put the link for that event page in the chat. And like I said, I'll also put my email in. So if you've got any ideas of events or parades or venues that we should be checking out, I'd love to hear those ideas. Yeah, Matt.
And I know I keep coming up with interruptions. I'm sorry, Brad. And if going out to primary day canvassing just isn't enough for you, and you want more to go with that, we're planning an after party event. We don't know exactly where yet, but we're all going to get those of us that were out doing the primary day canvassing are going to get together afterwards and chill for a little bit, probably have some dinner and what have you, because that actually happens to be the same night as our monthly meeting, and we're just going to cancel that and do a social event instead. So come on out to primary day canvassing, spend the day with us.
All right. The link for RSVPing for canvassing is in the chat. Any questions for me on upcoming events? All right. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brenna. So at our last meeting, we had a great discussion around different voting alternatives and, ranked choice voting and I even forget the other names because ranked choice voting came out so far ahead. But Pete did a great job explaining the different alternatives, what they meant. So I pressured him and enlisted him to come in and talk about primaries and what's wrong with what we have and what are all alternatives. So Pete, going to turn it over to you for another great session.
All right, sounds good. So we talked about ranked choice voting last time, and it's one of our kind of three pillars on election reform. The other one is gerrymandering, specifically ending gerrymandering, and then the third one being primaries. So we wanted to put some stuff together to explain the different types of primaries, why we are concerned about this, how this affects and how it all goes together, to sort of, so we can have, somewhat of a common language and understand why we choose the different versions that we do. And there's a lot of different names out there. There's a bunch of different, ways to do this. There's caucusing is a type of primaries that happens out there. There's open and closed and singled and jungle and party and nonpartisan. So what do all these phrases mean? Go ahead and go to the next one there, Bill. So really, they all kind of fall into three categories. So they're either closed, open, or single. And I'll explain what each of those different ones mean right now, but really you just have to track three of them. And this is our preferred wording for talking about each of these three types. So closed primaries is also called a party primary because there is only one primary per party, and every party has their own primary. It is only open to party members, and so that's why it's called closed. It's closed to everybody else. The open primary is also one primary per party, but it is open so that everybody can get a chance to vote. But you only get to vote in one of those primaries. And then the other one is called a single primary. And I'm going to go into each of these, in a little bit more detail in just a minute. There's other names for them. It's the same thing as a nonpartisan primary, if you've heard that phrase. We just find that people don't quite get what nonpartisan means. And they think that, oh, well, it's nonpartisan, then I guess you can't have parties in it. And so the Democrats and Republicans aren't involved. And it just starts to get confusing. So we've just decided, that it's better to use the phrase single primary. And I'll get into what that means in just a minute. The other name for this that you've heard may have been, it's called a jungle primary. We tend to not use that phrase for a couple reasons. One is because it kind of sounds vaguely racist. And the other one is that it is a derogatory term. And it is, in many ways, people use this intentionally negative to make this sound like it's a bad thing. But this is actually one of the better things here. So we stay away from using those other kinds of words because we want to show why this is a good thing, and there is a lot of politics out there that are trying to make this sound worse than it is. So that's why we're talking about this tonight and getting on the same page. And then the last word that was on that previous page was caucus. Caucus is just an in-person primary where you have to show up on the day of the event to a place in your town, and you stand there and you vote with your feet. And you go over to this area and you talk to people and you figure out who you're going to vote for. But it really is no different. It is just a primary that you do in person. So that's all we really need to know about caucuses. Caucuses can also be done with ranked voting and single voting and majority and plural and all the stuff we talked about last month. So caucus just means you're doing that in person. All right, so let's look at the first one on here. So closed primary. Why do we have closed primaries in the first place? Well, it's largely to avoid the spoiler effect. So I think we talked a little bit about spoiler effect last month, but spoiler effect is, if we've got two candidates that are pulling from the same voters and they're running in the same election, and we have a majority, or plurality vote system right now. And so if we have two candidates you like, half the people might go for one and half people might go for the other, which dilutes the vote. So they get half as many votes. And then the other candidate usually can end up winning without getting the majority of the people inside of there. And that was some of the calculations we went through. So in order to avoid this, each of the parties came up with this idea and said, let's not fight amongst ourselves. Let's just have a primary. Let's work it all out internally. Let's figure out who is going to be our Republican candidate, who is going to be our Democratic candidate, our Libertarian candidate, our Green candidate. And so each of these parties put together and said, this is how we are going to choose who represents us in the general election. And when we talk about open primaries and single primaries and these other different types of primaries, the parties usually push back a little bit on this to say, hey, the parties should be able to choose who represents them. And so this is an argument that you're going to hear a lot about why we shouldn't do open primaries, is because, Democrats should figure out who their Democratic candidate is, and Republicans should figure out who their Republican candidates are. And that sounds perfectly logical, except the result doesn't come out that way. The result of what actually happens is that well, let me start in the middle of the bullets there, which is that often the party starts putting together a platform, and the only people that they pretty much allow to be on that primary ballot are the people who support that platform. So if we're talking about the variety of thoughts and ideas and needs of the various different communities, they can instantly be filtered out of the primary thing, because you only get to be on the primary ballot in some places if you support the platform already of the party. And in many ways, many times the leadership of the party will actually go out and campaign on behalf of the person that they want to win for the party. They will take money. Is one of the things that got me frustrated with sort of leaving the party that I used to vote with, is because they would take our donations and then they would go out and run one of the primary candidates against another primary candidate. They basically would take the incumbent and they would use and spend my money to run the incumbent and try to get the incumbent elected in the primary and squash down all the other voices and all the other people out there. And that's one of the big dangers of a closed primary. And then if you live in a state like Maryland, and we go to the general election in Maryland, so many people are Democrats that whoever wins in the primary in the Democratic primary usually is going to be the person that ends up getting elected in the general. So what's happening is through all the different things that are happening inside the closed primary and the voting and the party leadership and the platforms and all this kind of stuff, the Democratic Party is choosing the platform, they're choosing the candidate, and they are marketing that particular candidate that they want to the voters. And surprise, surprise, that's often the person that's get elected in the primary, and then they know that's what's going to go to the general. So by the time we get to the general, we are not really having a choice. We're not actually voting for somebody. And what it's doing is discouraging people from wanting to go to vote because they feel like it's a formality, and what's the point? So these are all the reasons behind it. So it starts from this idea that the party should be able to choose who represents them. Which sounds great, but the reality is much darker than that. And so that's why we are against closed primaries. And I'm just talking about Democrats here because we're in Maryland and they are the primary party inside of Maryland. So let's say we are going out here and we're going to try to vote, and we've got all these various different candidates from different parties and some independents that we want to vote for. So this looks great that we have this variety of candidates. But Bill, if you go to the next slide, the reality of the situation in Maryland is you really just have these two, and their platforms are pretty much the same. So, in our little thing here, we're voting on what's our favorite state, ice cream, and what's our favorite state animal. So I hope you like vanilla and dogs, because that's what you're going to get. And those are the only choices that you get because that's the party platform. And this is one of those things that we think this is the problem. So this is what's caused by, closed primaries. All right, so let's go to the next one. So now we're going to talk about open primaries. So open primaries got this place of like, all right, the party's still going to control their primary, but they're going to open this up so that independents could vote, so that we'll let people in who don't belong to the party. And so that gets us this. That was the original idea of an open primary. So still, the Democrats get to elect the Democrats, the Republicans get to elect the Democrats. But independents get to choose. Well, as soon as they opened that up, what happened is that some of the people on the other side, so some of the Republicans went over and started registering in Democratic, for the Democratic primary, and some Democrats went over and started registering for the Republican primary. And what they started doing was voting for the candidate that they thought they could beat instead of voting for the candidate they actually wanted to get elected. And so now we're playing with the things, and it's not fair, and we're really messing with the system. And so this is another one of those downsides of having an open primary. And Bill, if you go to the next slide, let's take a look at that. This is the result of what happens is in the open primary, yes, you get to vote as an independent in the primary, which you didn't before. So that's better than it was, but you still only have those two candidates. And everything else that was a problem in the closed primary is still a problem in an open primary. So we're not really getting any advantages or huge advantages, except that we're allowing some independents to vote in those primaries, but we're also allowing for some, underhanded things to happen at the same time. All right, so let's take a look at the one that we advocate for, which is called the single primary. And so in the single primary, everybody is allowed to vote or for any candidates. So it is one single primary for the entire state. And in that single primary, you have the Democratic candidates, you have the Republican candidates, you have the independent candidates, you have the Libertarians, you have the Greens, you have forward candidates when we have a party. All of those things are happening in one party, and anybody can go in and vote for anybody they want to. So you're getting the benefit of being able to have independent voters participating in the primaries. That's a plus. We got that with open primaries as well. But you're also getting the possibility of having more independent candidates themselves to be able to be voted on. So the couple of the downsides of that. So it's not perfect. We're still in a place where the Republicans and Democrats can still cheat. They can still vote for the person that they think that they want to run against. They can still try to run the numbers to try to get, a final competition in the general election that they want. The party leadership is still going to campaign for their favorites and market those and really try to get people to vote, for this. It doesn't solve this kind of thing. And Bill, if you go to the next slide, what we're going to see is while we do get a choice for more candidates, and actually do one more after that, when we actually collect the votes, the percentages can be very small. And so some of the people who, we might be, it's the spoiler effect is going to pop up. Or when people vote for multiple different opportunities like this, they split the votes. And somebody that might get elected who is not the choice of the majority of the people in the state. So you may be asking, why do we advocate for single primaries if it's going to cause one of the main things that we're trying to avoid, which is the spoiler effect? This looks like this actually could work against us. And that's really what it comes down to. Is we don't advocate for single primaries by themselves. We advocate for a single primary and some form of ranked choice voting, like RCV or approval voting or star voting. And the two of those have to go together. Because if you just open up the primaries or you just create a single primary, but you don't have the ability to choose multiple people, then we're going to have a spoiler effect and we're going to have problems. So this is something that we have to go through and explain when we're talking at like the primary days or we're talking at different events and people are talking about it, because people will come along and very rightly say, I don't want to do open primaries because that's just going to mess up the election. And they're right. If we do that without some kind of ranked choice voting. So that's what we're always talking about when we're doing the clarification on it. So it's really important to know that ranked choice voting is the pin. It's the centerpiece of all of this kind of stuff. But ranked choice voting by itself is not everything. You need ranked choice voting with a single primary in order to give people the choice. But if you give them a single primary without ranked choice voting, we're making things worse. So that's why we always talk about these two things together. And Bill, can you go one more? I think I had one. Did I have one more slide? And then we're wrapping up.
We have two people with their questions.
Gotcha. I'll come to those questions in just a moment because I think we're just about here at the end. And yeah, so let's go one more slide in. And so, yeah, this sort of represents the thing. So if we put the two together, what we end up is we get legitimacy, and this is our goal. So by putting the two of these pieces together, what you're actually getting is everybody can vote for anybody they want to. So we get more candidates into the election, and anybody can vote, say, I approve of these 3 people or these 4 people being my representative. And so now the chance is more likely that you're going to get somebody that you like who actually gets elected in the general election when you put all these things together. All right, so those are the main pieces. Thank you for letting me get through one more slide. Let's hear some questions. I think Rachel was first hand up.
Thank you. And you may have answered this. My family came in literally as you were talking. So my question is about how the primary versus general election works with the single primary and ranked choice voting and all that. So would you end up just sending the top 2 to the general?
It could be. So you would basically set that down in the law that enables this type of thing. And so some states like California does top 2. Alaska does top 4. I think Maine does top 5. And so you pick those sorts of things. And the whole purpose of that is actually pretty decent, which is that if you've got to run 10 campaigns all year, and all 10 of those candidates are running campaigns all year. I mean, one, we're getting flooded with so many advertisements, they're taking over the airwaves, and it just becomes a whole lot of stuff. Plus, there's a lot of money that's getting invested, and people don't know if they're actually going to be a viable candidate until they get to the general election in November. So doing a primary up front helps to make it more manageable. It helps to keep from us wasting too much money on the different campaigns that are happening. And it says you've got your best chance in the primary. And if you can get one of those top 4 or top 5 slots, then you're going to the general. And now the rest of the year is about which of those 4 or 5 people is going to actually get to the position. All right. Angie's up next.
Thank you. So in the primary, I just have been seeing this a lot because obviously as people that are candidates, we are you become a public servant. Basically, you are, serving the people and what they want majority wise. However, I have found, especially in Board of Education race here, that some people will, run for office, but are actually realize they are not as qualified for it, as they should be. So, and then they end up dropping out. So how do we actually distinguish on what type of candidates are actually qualified for the positions that are running for, if we're just giving a whole slew in the single primary for everybody to run? Because people may get then halfway through the primary and realize that they are, in over their heads or whatever. So is there anything that is going to be able to distinguish that?
This is why it's so good to have primaries, because as people go through the races and they try to get enough votes, or they try to get enough people to sign up or do donations, the candidates start to get that first real public feedback as to whether or not anybody's going to elect them. And that's the purpose of primaries. Now, I don't know that there's anything different between single primaries, closed primaries, open primaries, and ranked choice voting that changes that process. And but it is the reason why we still want to have a primary, but we want to have a single primary with ranked choice voting, so that we get that weeding part done over the first few months, and those campaigns don't carry all the way through the entire year. So the primary itself, creates that sort of environment. And there's nothing about what we're trying to do that actually changes that process. Although we might have some other ideas that can help on that, but we need to get these 3 things in place first before we can tackle some additional ideas. And
But wouldn't ranked choice voting in the primary then kind of eliminate that? You don't think so?
because they're still running for the
And that-
primary, they're still putting up all their. So Matt's got some ideas. I'll let Matt speak, and then.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, Pete. I'm sorry. I just
Please
wanted
do.
to throw out there. Thank you. I just wanted to throw out there, to Angie's point. If you have ranked choice voting as part of the process, then those candidates that have dropped out of the race, people may still vote for them. And we saw this in the Republican primaries recently. People are still voting for DeSantis, and people are still voting for Asa Hutchinson, and those candidates have all dropped out. They're not in the race anymore. But if you had, and so those votes are wasted, right? But if we had ranked choice voting, those people would be selecting their second choice, and then their vote would still count. And so you mitigate the candidates that drop out by allowing people to have a second and a third choice and a fourth choice and a fifth choice with ranked choice voting to go along with the single primary, and therefore to answer your question directly, when candidates drop out because they feel that that they don't stand a chance or they're not qualified or whatever their reason is, there's still another choice there for the voter, and the voter gets an opportunity to do it. And it's especially important when we do mail-in voting and somebody drops out right after the mail-in ballots are already released or after the ballots are printed. So that, yes, I think ranked choice voting is a big part of this.
Yeah. All right. Next up was Robert.
Hey, Pete, it's good to meet you. I was introduced to your activities with policy and priorities this last weekend. I met up with PJ and Arnie at a brewery in Baltimore.
Nice.
So very excited to meet you and heard a lot of good things. I did send you a text. Hopefully we can be in touch at some point. I'd like to perhaps have a policy conversation with you. But just some of the points I'd like to bring up today. I certainly agree with our strategy for achievable goals on the 3 policy priorities for electoral reform. And I think those should remain our focus and our priority. But I think it also may be time to at least sketch out some of our longer term goals. And I think that kind of substance would attract a lot of people. I think people are on board with our 3 main electoral reforms, but there's more to entice people and more to show what Forward is capable of contributing to the conversation and the vision that we offer that is a true alternative other than just process stuff, but actual substance and results. So I would recommend perhaps keeping the 3 policy priorities as the spearhead, but repackaging it in something that I would call digital democracy. And there's a whole list of reforms that I have that I'd like to have a conversation with you on that front about. Any thoughts you might have on that? And yeah, just I hope that we can text and catch up that way.
All right. Thank you. It's been a very busy week for me, so I'm starting to be able to breathe again. So my apologies for not getting back to you right away. And yeah, let's definitely have a talk. I think some of those things are really getting into, yeah, we are talking about what's next, and and also the talks about the things that come next, I think are going to help to let people know who we are, and let people know that we're getting ready to that we have a lot of things that we can do once we get past like some of the initial stuff. But I think you're right, they all feed into each other, so happy to have a conversation about that. All right, Bill.
Thanks. So just, Michael and Angie, just as you said, all of a sudden I'm looking at a much wider choice, people I've never heard of before. How do I know who to select and how to do this process? I think that's where the whole approach of the Forward Party makes a whole lot of sense. Each of these folks can be supporting different issues, and is there one person who agrees with all the issues that you agree with, and how do you find that person? That's almost impossible. But with the Forward Party, we're going to be putting forward candidates who have signed a candidate pledge, and you'll know these are people with integrity, and as opposed to individual pledges, this is the kind of person that we want in representing us. So it's, again, I think reflective of the kind of approach we bring, and as we educate folks that they'll see that if someone's a Forward Party, then we know the kind of person they are, and then we can look into the specific issues if that's important to us from there. And that's kind of a good segue into our next topic. So if there's no other questions for Pete, we'll move into the next topic. Oh, one last slide for you, Pete.
Yeah, and I already covered this one, so, but yeah, this is the slide that goes with it. So just remember, open primaries are not everything. It all works together.
Thanks. So a number of you, as we've talked about volunteering, I've asked the question and I've kind of summarized it in one form here, that the press is talking significantly about, this is going to be in 2024 a very difficult election. Lots of different issues associated with the different candidates. And as bad as it's going to be, third parties are just going to make it worse. And why should I get involved with, the forward party that's just going to make a difficult situation even worse? And so Tanya has agreed to step forward and kind of give our answer to that. So Tanya, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, everyone. And I'm going to keep this brief because this is where I think, will get into discussion. And so we can pick your brains as volunteers and not just preach to you when it comes to this question. But I hit the highlights. The biggest thing that the public needs to know about Forward is we're not running national candidates in 2024. So there won't be a spoiler effect in that we're not stealing votes from the Democrats or from the Republicans, not this time around anyway. So that's not a big concern that we are adding to when it comes to the press. Now, there are other parties out there, libertarians, green parties, the National Liberation Party is still in existence. So there are other parties that may get into playing that game, if you will, but not the Forward Party. That's not what we're here for. That's not what we're about. The other reason why we believe third parties are good things is right now the Forward Party is focusing on what we call the grassroots level. When we talk about democracy, I have to remind people democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the people are at the local level, not at the federal level. So we're literally starting at the grassroots. We're at the bottom level. And you're absolutely right, Matt. We're not a third party. We're just an additional party that can invigorate, motivate, and influence voters to be active in our democratic society and not just in the politics of it all. Because the people are supposed to make these decisions, and those at the federal level are just representatives of who we are at the local and the state level. The third reason I put it up there is it's a check and balance for our two-party system. We get so accustomed to just being Democrats or Republicans, we tend to forget that there are other parties that exist. And I pulled up the numbers for the state of Maryland because I wanted to share these with you so you all would know the parties that have ballot access at this moment in time in Maryland. As of March 31st of this year, Maryland has 4,185,173 registered voters. I'm gonna say it again because I might have messed that up. 4,185,173 registered voters. That's total statewide. There are 2,208,095 Democrats, 994,529 Republicans, 234 voters registered as the No Labels Party, 18,836 voters registered as libertarians. There are 909,180 unaffiliated or independent voters. And then there are 54,299 voters registered as other, whatever that is. That's the makeup of our Maryland electorate. That's our constituency when we start talking about going to the ballot box. And I will tell you, if you look at the statistics, the other thing that you might recognize, and these are our data that's published on the Board of Elections website. You can get it at the state website anytime you want. There are people who don't vote at all, even though they're registered. So we also have a high level, unfortunately, of voter apathy in the state. So when I tell you it's a check and balance for our two-party system, that's what I mean. We're not talking about reaching those voters who've tuned out voting because they don't like what the Republicans have to say or they don't like what the Democrats have to say. And what you have to understand is when you register most times to run as a Democrat or as a Republican, when you win the primary, they ask you to sign on to the platform. So even if you don't agree with everything in that platform, you've now signed a commitment saying you're not going to speak against the platform. And that's why a lot of people choose not to run. That's why a lot of people choose not to participate in the electoral process. And we want to change that. We want everybody to have and to use and feel comfortable using their voice, because that's what democracy is all about. And then the fourth reason, I can't even count my own bullets. The fourth reason is you want to give independent voters an alternative. One of the things that attracted me to the Forward Party is this: I can have my own platform. I make the policy decisions that I want to support if I'm going to run for office. I'm not signing on to a Democratic platform or a Republican platform, because I will tell you, I'm one of those voters where there are things on everybody's platform at some point in time that I might like. But when you tie me to one, it almost makes me adversarial to the other. And I don't like that. In the Forward Party, we allow the candidates to decide what their policy platform is going to be. All we ask our candidates to do is to commit to certain ethical behavior and responsible behavior when you're running as a candidate. And they have to believe in those three principles, or those three values that we have talked about constantly in this party. And so guess what? If I want to be conservative when it comes to budget and taxpayer money, I can be conservative. If I want to be extremely liberal when it comes to personal rights, I can be liberal. And I still fit in the Forward Party. And so, again, check and balance on the Democratic platform and on the Republican platform. And it allows us to be the individual thinkers that we are. So keep that in mind when people challenge you and say you're being disruptors or spoilers, because that's really not what we're here for. We're here to respect the voter choice. That's the bottom line. And we're also here to give everybody that choice.
Thanks, Brenda. That's been great. I would like to also thank Matt, Pete, and Brenna for their discussion. I think the four of them really gave us a lot of great stuff for tonight. As we look ahead, what are additional topics that we want to have? So a chance to bring up anyone for discussion tonight or in the future. I'll just share with you, from an educational perspective, we've talked about, ranked choice voting last month. We talked about primaries this month. Next month, I'm going to look for a volunteer from the board to talk about gerrymandering and kind of what that's all about. Again, what are our recommendations there? The big three in terms of our priorities. Beyond that, we have training on our elevator pitch for those working the electoral primary days, and hopefully a lot of folks will be doing that. Those who can't, then we'll look to have another session for those who weren't able to, just to make them comfortable with the electoral, with the elevator pitch as part of that. Also looking at some other topics, like when we talk about continuing resolution, why is that the biggest waste of money that Congress can ever do for us, and help us understand some of the issues with Congress as part of that. And I think one of the greatest things that we have is a candidate pledge, and maybe spending some time going through that. And Matt did that a little bit in our very first meeting, and I think maybe that's worth going back to and really understanding that. So those are some of the things that I have coming up for the future. I'll ask folks to throw into the chat session any questions you have, any topics you think we should discuss, tough questions coming up as part of that. If there's ones that you think you're not sure you want your name associated with, I put my email there in the chat. If you send me a topic or a question, it'll be treated as totally confidential. I'll bring it up, but your name will never be associated with it. So, just help me make this meeting covering the things that you want to know about, we want to talk about, and help you be more effective. So I'll open it up for anybody who wants to raise it, offer something out verbally. And again, you've got the chat and you've got emails. There's other ways to bring up ideas and suggestions.
Do you want me to turn off the recording now?
One more thing. So just our next meeting will be on Thursday, May 16th. And again, what we've done is we're cycling the meetings. So because we had folks with a conflict most every night of the week, so we did the first one on Thursday, the second one Tuesday, this one Wednesday, next one's on Thursday. We're going back to Tuesday. So again, just giving us the chance to get as many people involved as possible. So just if you want to put that on your calendar, and I'll get notices out letting folks know that. So if there's no questions with that, then we'll go ahead and turn off recording and just open up for general discussion.
I'm gonna put one more plug in. Come to the volunteer training tomorrow night virtually, and I'll see you there so that you can practice your elevator pitch. And now the recording's off.